Hello and welcome back, friends, to another episode of Lynch Paints, where I, Lynch, will be showing you all how to paint the Blood Angel Space Marine Legion for your Horus Heresy armies. So, before I get started, I'd just like to mention that a lot of you that do watch my content aren't subscribed, so just please, 2 seconds of your time, click the button, and it'll make me very, very happy. And yeah, you get to stay up to date with all the stuff. You know, you click the bell, you can like it, share it with your friends, comment, but obviously watch the video first, and yeah, do all that usual YouTubey stuff. I do have to mention it, I do apologise. Yeah, with all that sort of waffle nonsense, usual stuff out of the way, let's get on to some painting. So let us grab our paints and paintbrushes and our chalices of blood, and let's dive straight into this. However, before we get started, we're going to need a selection of paints, and these are all the ones I've used in this video today, alongside which we're going to need a medium-sized basing brush, a smaller, finer detail brush, and of course, our teeny tiny brush for all of those teeny tiny places. So our first step is going to be to apply ideally a black acrylic primer over the model, unless you're a bit of a goof like me and left the black spray at work. So what I did is that I had to spray it white because that's all I had to hand, and then I just showered it with a load of Black Legion contrast. But hopefully you're not in that situation and yet you have black, so give it a nice black spray paint over the top. That's why it looks a little bit not solid. So it's not going to matter too much, just so long as it has a dark base coat. That's all that really matters. Now we're going to start out not with jumping straight into red, but we're going to try this Screamer Pink. We have this medium-sized brush. What we're going to do is just going to dab it on there and just dip a little bit of water just to help with the flow. And then we're going to go over the armor panels. Now that this layer is dried, we're then going to take our Screamer Pink, a Lamer Medium, and also we're going to now start with this Mephiston Red, or the equivalent of whatever you have to hand. I know that obviously, like other brand companies, have different names for their paints, but as long as it's roughly these sorts of shades, then you're good to go, really. I'm going to start out with like a bit of a 50-50-ish mix, actually probably more like a 60-40, purely because this Mephiston Red is quite a potent colour. It's quite powerful. So what we're going to do is just dab a little bit more of that into there, just to have it thinned down. Again, you know, you can use water, but in these like hot weather that we've been having in the UK at the minute, just water is going to dry out your paints very, very quickly. So using this is fantastic. And then we're just going to start to wet blend a little bit. So the reason why that I use the Screamer Pink is because it's a nice darker red to use as a bit of a primary base layer. You can use purple if you wanted to, but I thought that might have been a little bit too dark, and it would take many, many layers to get it up to where we want it to go, unless you're looking for a very high contrast looking miniature, then you could probably do that. But for this, I want to try and keep it as simple as I can, because at the end of the day, it being Horus Heresy, you can be having to paint probably at least 40 just tactical marines, you know, let alone all your assault squads, breaches, recons, all of that stuff. You know, you'd be painting like upward of maybe like 100 miniatures marines alone, you know, just for like a good size force. So if I can try and keep it as simple as I can, as quick as I can, but still provide really, really good results, then that is my objective done. And that's the whole point of this Horus Heresy series that I'm doing at the minute. Now that that layer is dry, we can then move on to using even more Mephiston Red. I just had to rinse my brush off just because it was getting a little bit caked up in paint, and with the heat and such, it was not looking too good. So remember, always just double check your brushes and make sure you look after them, unless they're quite cheap and expendable, then it doesn't really matter. But just, you know, try and look after your stuff as best you can. So with this, we're just going to slowly build up our colours. So working in smaller areas to give a nice sort of blended look. And just, it's always best to add in a little bit of your Mephiston red in at a time. Have a little test, maybe like on the leg, or maybe like the back of the leg, somewhere that it's not going to be as important, and see how vibrant it is compared to the last one. Of course, you know, we're using this stuff here just to help blend it in even better. Because again, you know, the Mephiston red, I believe it's like the intensity of the pigment that's in the paint is very, very intense. So make sure you just add in a little bit, because then you can always add in a little bit more. But if you add too much, then you've got to try and rub it off quickly before it completely dries and sort of tidy up after that. So remember, it's always best to have too little than too much. Now we're going to be using pure Mephiston red, but I'm just going to mix it into the same mixture that we've already got here, because why not? I mean, really, why not? I don't know. But anyway, so it will obviously have a little tiny percentile of the previous mixture into there. So I mean, it's going to be probably 98% Mephiston red, but you kind of get the point. So we are now entering just the final kind of little bits of the blending here. I'm going to be focusing on the main spots, the main bits where the light's going to be hitting it, and you're going to get really nice blended result. And it depends on how bright of a red that you're going to go for. So I know that the recent sort of newer paint style of GW is, to me, it looks more cartoonish. To me, it's a bit too poppy, too showy, a bit too bright for my liking. I much prefer, as you probably already know if you have been watching my content for a little while, is that I much prefer the old style of the Forward World team that painted the Horus Heresy stuff, because it was much more realistic. It's much more kind of grimier, grittier, a lot more sort of darker palettes and stuff like that, and I absolutely love it. I think that fits the Horus Heresy theme really well. It's synonymous. To me, it might be as well for some of you guys watching as well at home, that is Forward World style. Horus Heresy is the paint job to go for. So I want to try and replicate it, and also maybe try and simplify it at the same time as well, because they have a lot of detail, and also like a lot of weathering as well. And weathering is something that I may do separately, do like a separate video on weathering marines. I have done one on weathering orc vehicles. It's a bit of an older video with my original intro and outro stuff. So if you want a little bit of Lynch Paints nostalgia, go and watch them. I've done one on a Death Guard Marine as well, and that's got some similar weathering techniques, but obviously on a much smaller scale compared to I think I painted a Death Dread was for that orc weathering video, but definitely check it out after this as well if you are interested. If you are interested in me painting up and sort of weathering a miniature for Horus Heresy, and you want to know a little bit about different weather conditions, different weathering techniques, then do let me know in the comments. If you wanted to intensify the red, then what you can do is very simply just go back over it again a second time, and it will really pop. It'll really help to make those red areas stand out just a little bit more, because of course we have thinned them down with the layman medium. I do apologise if you can hear any screaming in the background. Some neighbour's kid is going absolutely nuts, so yeah. Don't think that you guys can hear it, but I can, and it sounds like he's either having a really nice time or a really bad time. I don't know which. Now we're going to go over to our next step. So we're going to go and use either black or just black contrast paint, whichever you find easiest. I prefer this one, to be fair. And then we're just going to go back over the dark areas, the black trim, that sort of thing, because the first layer that I put on wasn't quite thick enough, as you could tell by the very start of the video. So I'm going to put this back over, and it also helped just to tidy up some of the areas that have sort of overshot with some of the red. And of course, you know, you can try and be as neat as you possibly can, but you'll always end up overshooting, overspilling just a little bit. You don't have to necessarily go over the areas that we're going to put like metallics on, because as long as it's darker, it doesn't really matter. We're going to go back over them anyway. So I'm just going to focus mainly on the trim here, and then we can give it a little blend afterwards. But if you want to save some time, then you could just thin this down really, and then that way it's still going to show up some of the raised areas, and it's already kind of in a way pre-highlighted, and then that's that. Once we're done with that, we're then going to move over to using some of this Corvus black, or if you don't have this and you just have regular old black, just mix in a slightly darker grey into your mixture until it's just above your black. And then what we're going to do is that we're just going to, in a way, sort of do a bit of a blend slash sort of dry brush, just going over around the trim and all of the dark areas. Also, if you were in the business of highlighting, then you can always add in some of this lovely storm vermin fur in with the mixture, and you can just give this all the black areas just an extra little highlight, a little extra pizzazz if you wanted to. I'm just going to kind of have a little bit that helps just to mirror the brighter, more intense red, so then you get a bit of a nice sort of joint contrast there. Now we're going to move on to using some metallics. So we have this nice dark steely colour, and then I'm just going to put that over there. Then what we're going to do, obviously, as the name implies, we're just going to go over all of the metallic bits and pieces, and it's entirely up to you exactly what you paint based on your Space Marine miniature, the mark of it, and that kind of thing. You can, if you want, swap out to smaller brushes just to do the inner gaps here and there, but I'm just going to try and stick to just using this brush if I can. Obviously, until we get around to doing the eyes, then I'm going to switch out to my teeny weeny brush for obviously those teeny tiny places. So I'm not going to go too fancy with the sword, but I figured I may as well just do a little bit. So I'm going to use some of this Grey Knight Steel, nice kind of brighter steely blue. I'm going to just, no. So I haven't washed out my brush, so that's going to take some of the previous colour and it's just going to help me just blend it in just a little bit better. So I'm going to go with just simply top side and that side, get a slight difference. I mean, it is ever so slight. This guy's going to be probably a sergeant in a squad. But of course, you know, there's loads of other tutorials out there for doing really, really lovely swords. And if you're currently painting up a character, then I would highly recommend checking those out if you wanted a little extra detail. But we can just pop in a little bit of this stuff here and there just to make some of the other metallics just stand out a little bit. Maybe not that much on there. Now I'm just going to add in a little bit of gold just for a little bit of bling on the sword. I'm going to butcher it. Just the sword handle. I know that's probably not what it's called. Hand guard. That sounds about right. And obviously with the detail of the handle itself, you can do that whatever colour you like. If you're after something a little bit more interesting, then look up a colour wheel and look at the direct opposite colour to red. put that in there, like a green would be quite nice. Or you can take the darker tones of the armor that we've been doing so far, and have it like a purple, so it sort of matches up with the red quite nicely. It's entirely up to you how you want to paint that little tiny handle, or if you want to paint it at all. And I just noticed there's these teeny tiny little skulls, so I'm going to do them in a nice gold. And if it's a character, you know, you can add some of this onto the helmet and that sort of thing. Maybe. No, I'll leave it. Keep it simple. Now we're going to move on to the eyes. So I have this Corax white. I'm just going to dunk that in there a sec. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to fill out the eye lenses. Not completely, obviously. No. So we're just going to follow and aim for like the middle. So like that. You might end up with some paint just, I don't know how we can see, but sort of scraping off the rim of the trim. Hey, that rhymed. And you can always just go back over it and tidy up afterwards. But so long as it's roughly in place, you can tidy it up at a later date. So, may as well do that now. Finish that off. Hit the camera, sorry about that. There we go. I mean, you could always use some of that overspill to your advantage and have more of a glowing effect. That could work. So, because it's a base color with the Citadel range, it tends to dry out quicker than the layer paints because they're not as thick. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to grab some of this stuff. So Beltan Green, lovely shade. And what we're going to do is that we're going to grab some of this, maybe that's a bit too much, wipe it off. And then we're just going to just add it into the lens. Really nice and simple. Start from the middle, work backwards, and that way it's going to pull more towards the back than the front. And I've mentioned in my previous videos as well that if it starts to sort of pool a little bit too much, if it's too green and you can't quite see the white, then what you can do is that you can just rinse your brush off and sort of dry it out a little bit, and then you can just dip it into the lenses, and then the capillary actions of the bristles will draw up some of that excess material in there until you have the right kind of shade. But that, I got it first try. How about that? So that's the eyes done. Really nice and easy, and again, you know, it's great for if you're trying to do loads of miniatures all at once. If you've got like a factory line set up, it's great. And speaking of doing sort of like factory bits and pieces, is that for the next step, we're going to obviously do the logo. So I'm just going to kind of move these off for now over here, and I'm going to be selecting these two. And obviously, you know, you would have your transfer sheets. So use them if you're doing, you know, like big batches. But I'm going to now go over to the freehanding. So it's going to be a logo time, and as far as chapter Legion logos go, it's actually not that complicated. So if you are thinking maybe you could kind of give it a shot, we're doing it freehand, give it a go. It's fun. I mean, it's not as intimidating as you might think, because if it does go wrong, you can always, if it's thinned down, you can quickly rub it off. Or if it's already dried, then you know you're using thin enough paints that you can just simply go over with the previous color and correct it. You can do that, so it's worth giving it a go. So I've got a teeny weeny tiny brush. It's not the teeny weeny tiny brush, because again, you know, it's not that complicated. So I'm gonna stop waffling now and, you know, get on with it. So let's do that. And so here we are at the end of the video. So this is how I went about painting the Blood Angels for your Horus Heresy Legions. Now, I will admit, I was a little bit overconfident with doing the logo. So I made the blood drop a little bit too big, and then I had to kind of try and match that up with the size of the wings, and the wings didn't quite fit. So it's not my finest freehand logo, I've got to admit. But as a first time, it ain't too bad. It isn't too bad. And again, just because, you know, it might not look perfect on the first run, doesn't mean it should stop you from doing it again and again if, you know, you collect Blood Angels. So I do still recommend, if you want to give it a go, just give it a go. I'd probably say maybe start out with something a little bit bigger, like on a Rhino or a Dreadnought, perhaps, and then work smaller. That's what I probably recommend the most. And speaking of Rhino and Dreadnoughts and all the kind of other armies and bits and pieces, if you wanted to pick up some Marines and reinforcements for your legions yourselves, then check out my affiliate link for Wayland Games down in the description below. There'll be some stills and reels of this miniature over at my Instagram page at Lynch Paints. If you want to go check me out over there, that'd be fantastic. And of course, if you are new and you made it all the way to the end of the video, then I would like to thank you and kindly direct you towards the subscribe button down below. Just click it, just 2 seconds of your time. If you like the video, like it, share it with your friends, and also comment down below, do you collect Blood Angels? Do you like how I've done it? It's probably taking me about 2 hours, give or take, to do this one. So it's not exactly the speediest, but I think it turned out pretty darn well with the kind of level of paint job that we've got. And I also have a Discord channel as well, that'll be linked in the description below. So all the fun stuff is down in the description, and also, you know, the like and subscribe and comment and share and all that sort of lovely stuff. And I'd just like to say thank you ever so much for watching. Stay safe, stay beautiful, and we'll see you all next time.